Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the college live stream. My name is Ian McConaughey. I work in undergraduate admissions and outreach at the university. This session today is to talk to you all about colleges, and we have four panelists today, each representing a different college, and they're going to speak to you today about various aspects of their college, but also the collegiate system in general. So I'll let them introduce themselves. Let's start with Mamouna.
Hi everyone, I'm Mamouna. I've just finished my final year of studying experimental psychology and I'm at University College.
Great, thank you. Let's go to Shelley.
Hi, good morning everyone. My name is Shelley Knowles and I work as part of the Access and Outreach team at Jesus College, Oxford.
Great, and Ethan?
Hi, I'm Ethan. I've just finished my second year studying economics and management at St Hilda's College.
Thanks, Ethan. And Lizzie?
Hi everyone, I'm Lizzie. I'm the Access and Outreach Coordinator at St Edmund Hall, which is one of the colleges at Oxford, and before that I was a geography student here.
Great, thanks everyone. So before we start asking questions to the panel, I'm just going to give a short introduction to the collegiate system, because it can be a bit of a strange concept for people who aren't familiar with it. So some people see the colleges as sort of just like different blocks of accommodation, and actually it's a lot more than that. So each of the colleges is sort of like its own miniature campus. As well as there being accommodation, there are other facilities as well. So there'll be a dining hall. Some colleges might have their own bar, or they might have a gym, things like that. But then there's also the academic side as well. So each college is its own sort of academic community. You'll have tutors at your college, so they will be responsible for your education on your course, and it's likely that a lot of your small group teaching, which we call tutorials in Oxford, will take place in your college with your college tutors, although some may be out of college. Lectures won't take place in college though, so if you go to a lecture, then you'll probably be going to the department rather than the college, and there'll be students from all of the colleges there. But the small group teaching is likely to take place in college, at least some of it. The colleges might also have other spaces as well, such as libraries and other study spaces, and that's on top of what's offered at the university. So they're very much the academic home of the student, more than just accommodation. One thing we're always asked is how you can go about choosing a college. Well, I'll start just by saying the very first thing you should do is check which colleges offer your course, because there will be some colleges, depending on the course you're applying for, that don't offer your course. And this varies depending on how sort of specialized the subject is, or specific the subject is. So for instance, if you're applying for something like computer science and philosophy, that's quite a specific course. It's not offered at too many colleges. There's a limited number, but there are still more than one to choose from. Whereas if you're applying for, say, law, that's offered at almost every college. It's a very big subject here. So let's just go around the panel and let's speak to them about how someone might go about choosing a college. We'll start with Shelley.
Hi, thank you, Ian. Yeah, I think, as you said, the most important thing is check that the colleges you're interested in actually offer your subject. There's also kind of other, I guess, more personal and practical things that people take into consideration. That will be things like accommodation that's provided by colleges that you're interested in. A lot of, but not all, colleges offer accommodation for the whole duration of your course. So it's worth kind of, finding out about that, seeing if that's something that's, a particular requirement for you. Do find out about that. It's also worth looking at things like what facilities colleges have. Now, they'll all have kind of general things. I think, as Ian mentioned, a library. All colleges have a library. Usually, they'll have food and catering facilities, bar, usually IT facilities, that kind of thing. But you may also want to think about other things that might be on offer, such as what sports facilities they have. For example, some colleges might have gyms, others don't. Some may have other sort of annex sporting facilities, such as sports pitches and boat club and all that kind of thing. So it's worth kind of looking at the kind of the social side of it as well. Also check out the the JCR websites for each college, because that will tell you, and there'll be lots of useful information on there, not just practical things, but it'll also kind of give you a flavour of the community at the colleges. So what kind of clubs and societies are available, what kind of support that's offered amongst the student community, as well as provided by the college. So all kind of things like that to do with sports, welfare, you know, and things like accommodation and meals and that kind of thing. There's probably lots of things I missed out there, but that's kind of off the top of my head to start with.
Great, thank you. Let's go to Lizzie next.
I think Shelley covered quite a lot of it there. Thinking back to when I was a student, I think obviously I was doing geography, so I looked at which colleges offer geography. I actually wanted the opportunity to not live in college accommodation if I wanted to. So I was quite interested in a college where I could sort of have the pretty historic room, and then I'd actually have a chance to kind of have a practice run at adulting, you know, renting a house with my friends and have that bit more independence. So that was why I actually looked at several colleges where I would have more of an opportunity to go and have that extra bit of independence if I wanted it. On top of that, I'd recommend looking at the social media that your college has or the JCR has. So Shelley mentioned the JCR website. Here at St Edmund Hall, our students have their own Instagram channel, which is quite access focused, and they do sort of a day in the life and takeovers. And I wish I'd had things like that I could have looked at. So that's a really good way of, again, sort of seeing who's there, seeing what the vibe is. And obviously a lot of people come to an open day to kind of get the atmosphere, get the vibe, and social media is probably the next best way of doing that at the moment.
Great, thank you. Well, let's go to our students next to hear about how someone might choose a college. So we'll go with Mamuna first.
Thanks. I definitely think that there are sort of three important things when you're picking college, and that's sort of, we covered accommodation already, but sort of location as well, because the colleges are mostly central in Oxford, but you might want to be closer to certain things. Like, for example, Univ is on the high street, which means that it's sort of a 10-minute walk away from the Tesco, not far from the doctors. You know, you might have different things that you'd want to be close to. You might want to pick a college that's closer to your department. Although most of the colleges are sort of within walking distance of pretty much everything, but you might want to have a look a bit deeper at that. But the most important thing is where you feel comfortable, and it can be really hard to tell that from these virtual open days. But I definitely recommend I did this as before applying, but asking the colleges that I was interested in to send me prospectuses, which I got in the post, and then that gave me a really nice sort of look into what the atmosphere is like. I know Univ has an alternative prospectus that's written by the students, so it can be really good to sort of access everything that's out there and really get a feel for where you think the atmosphere matches up to what you want.
Great, thank you. Let's go to Ethan.
Yeah, I think to be honest, I think a lot of it's been covered. So yeah, I do E&M, so that's not quite offered at every college, so that's something I had to consider when I was choosing where I wanted to study. But I also think in terms of your course, if you're really into your subject and there are some academics that you've heard of at Oxford and you really want the opportunity to maybe study at their college and be tutored by them, it is worth considering. Because there's a lot of impressive academics here. If you're really into it, then maybe look at that. A big thing I look at is size of the college. Some colleges are really small and have like kind of you almost end up as like one big group in your year group because there's not many of you, so you all kind of form one friendship group. Whereas other colleges are huge. There's opportunity to meet lots of different people, and that can be quite refreshing, I think. I'd look at accommodation, but one thing I considered a lot was price because I didn't want to spend too much money. But I also did want the opportunity to live out, as Lizzie said. I think it's a really valuable experience, and especially in Oxford, living out is like really fun because in college you're expected to move out kind of after term. Whereas if you live out, you have the opportunity to spend time in Oxford outside of term time, which is for me when I've spent the best quality time with my friends, really enjoyed the city without the stress of kind of my workload. So that's something I enjoyed. I'd look at location a little bit, but also with a bike, everything's 10 minutes away in Oxford. Like nothing is too far if you can cycle, and that's fine. And also, I mean, I don't even have a bike, but I quite like the walks. Some of my lectures were half an hour away in first year, but that was not a problem for me. St Hilda's is slightly out of town, which is nice because we're a little bit secluded. I know in town you are close to certain stuff, you know, if you're right in the city centre, but you know, it can be noisy and it's always busy and stuff. So it's worth thinking about that. And then the final thing, which is the hardest thing to get a sense of, and you know, I understand that, but it is culture. And I think the only way you get that is by speaking to students, because sometimes, you know, staff can't even be 100% tapped into it. They have an idea, but it's the little things like other little traditions, you know, in certain accommodation buildings. What the students like, how active are they socially? You know, what's the culture of the sports teams? What's the culture of music clubs? It's things like that which make you understand what the college is actually like to be there. And I think that's really important. And it's difficult to get a sense of, but speaking to as many current students as you can is the best way to do it.
Great, thanks everyone. So I think one thing the viewers may have noticed is that we didn't talk much about the sort of academic side there. And there's definitely an element of if you particularly want to study under certain tutors, then that's something that some people do consider. But otherwise on the academic side, there isn't much there. Lizzie, you've got a
Yeah, I wanted to mention quickly on tutors, because people do talk about it quite a bit, but it's so important to remember that tutors can move colleges, they can move universities, they might take sabbaticals, but also you often go to other colleges to be tutored by the experts. So to give you an example, when I was at St Edmund Hall, it came time for me to study climatology. There's no climate expert at St Edmund Hall, so I went across to Keble College and studied there. And similarly, when I was looking at ancient paleo environments, or sort of what was the Earth like a million years ago, I went to St John's College, I went to St Hugh's College. It mixed up a bit. So it's great if there are tutors you're interested in, but I really wouldn't put too much store on it, because if you choose the options they're likely to teach, because those are your interests, you'll probably get taught by them anyway.
Yeah, exactly. They'll always make sure that you are taught by the relevant experts, whether that's in your college or not. And I was going to say that, so we've not mentioned much on the academic side, and that is because in general, you're receiving the same education, whichever college you go to. Also, we've not talked about the admissions side, and that's because your chances of getting into the university shouldn't be affected by the college that you choose. And the reason I mention that is because we do get questions about whether you get to apply to multiple colleges, or whether more than one college will consider you, or if you're more likely to get in if you apply to a particular college. We have various mechanisms in order to try and make the process as fair and balanced as possible. I just wanted to talk about a couple of those before we move on. So one is through the use of what we call an open application. And this is if you just can't decide which college you want to go to, you can choose to make an open application instead. And what happens there is that a computer will allocate a college to you right at the start of the process, before any consideration has been given to any applicants. The colleges won't know if you've made an open application or not. You'll just appear as though you applied to that college. And we can use that process to try and even out numbers a bit. We then also reallocate through the process. So it's possible that you could be invited to interview at a different college to the one you applied to. And actually, it's quite a reasonable proportion. It's probably around a quarter of students at Oxford that didn't apply to the college that they ended up at. And I think most students would say their college is the best. So ultimately, it doesn't really matter which college you apply to. If you've got any sort of preference, you can choose one, or you can make an open application. Yes, Mamuna.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. I've not met a single person who is not happy with being reallocated to their college. Wherever you end up, you will feel like home.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, let's move on. We've got a few different areas to try and cover. So the first one that I want to start with is sort of societies and social life. So let's start by talking about the kind of clubs and societies on offer. If we could go to Ethan first.
Yep. So at St Hilda's, we do kind of a lot of sports stuff. Our football team won Cuppers, which is the big competition with all the colleges. That was last academic year. So that was quite a big deal. But we're really into sport. And we also have a lot of people who play university level sport as well. So as a college, that's kind of part of our culture. We're also quite into music, very active choir. We have a big kind of music room on site, which is quite well known throughout the university. And you can book practice rooms, and there are lots of different bands and stuff to take part in. I think also in terms of society, St. Hilda's has a big like feminist history. So every year we put on this huge 1 week feminist festival, which is full of events, and that's kind of a big part of the extracurricular stuff at St. Hilda's. I'm trying to think what else. I mean, just in general, our JCR committee, which is kind of students appointed to positions of responsibility where they get to put on events and stuff. We're really active and we make sure that we're putting on lots of events. So every week there's something interesting to do. And it might be as random as, you know, doing a cut and stick in the JCR, or maybe you're petting alpacas in a field. But that's like, you know, there's always something on offer.
Great, thanks, Ethan. Let's hear from Lizzie as well about Teddy Hall.
Excellent, that's a great introduction. So when I came to Teddy Hall in particular, it was really known for sport. It was the most successful college in this, that, and the other. And I came to realise quite quickly that, yeah, that was because there were some good players, but it was because it was the kind of college where everybody joined in with things. So I played lacrosse for the first time ever. I played rounders for the first time since I was about 10. I went and joined in with swimming cuppers, and we won because we turned up with more people than anyone else, not because we were actually any good. And that was a really enjoyable way of getting to know people and sort of going to support the team. But in recent years, there's also been a real push at creative writing. So St Edmund Hall's got a creative writing society. We invite different alumni back who perhaps publish books or poems, and they run workshops with students who are interested in writing, as well as giving wider talks. And that's supported by our English staff, but it's absolutely not just for English students, it's for all sorts of people. And we also have various essay and writing prizes, including some just for people on science courses, because I think we have a real emphasis on whatever your course is, being able to express yourself, being able to create interesting pieces of work, perhaps even being able to communicate your research. So there's lots of great sporting opportunities, as well as lots of creative writing type opportunities. And finally, we have an Equalities Week, which is a growing initiative. The highlight of that, I think, for most of the college is we have a food day where people from around the college community from all sorts of different backgrounds bring in some food. So we have some staff members and students. And I think the last time I went, we had food from southern Pakistan, we had food from northern India, we had food from Sichuan province. Like, we had loads of different backgrounds represented, and it was a really fun way of, again, getting to know people, but learning a little bit more about each other, and some nice home comforts for different people as well. So that was a really fun thing to be part of.
Great, thank you. Just one more thing on the sort of social life side before we move on to the next bit. I wonder if, Mamuna, you could talk a little bit about how students find time to balance work and social life.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot how to unmute for a second. Yeah, absolutely. When you're in the midst of term and you've got sort of deadlines left, right, and centre, it can be really hard to sort of pull yourself out of your room, out of the library. But it's really important to remember that the work cannot happen without the relaxation, without the social side of things, being able to wind down as well. And I think my sort of way of doing that was to really prioritize my health, but also sort of have dedicated times where I'd be, okay, this is work time, and I'd set my timer, and also try and just go for a walk every day, because Oxford is beautiful. That's my sort of de-stress. I tend to find sort of social things a little bit like stressful myself, but getting involved with things remotely this year has been a blessing. Kind of, I mean, I know it's been a hard year, but it's been easier for me, because I can get involved and not feel sort of anxious about it. So we have lots of remote sort of arts things going on at UNIV. We've done remote open mics and things. So basically, giving yourself the time and the allowance to take some time off work is really important, and it's a skill that you're always sort of working on as well. You're not going to have it straight away, but yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think we often hear that from students, that it is a different experience to learning at school, but you pick it up over your time here and you learn to manage your time. Same question to Ethan then.
Yeah, managing kind of the workload and social side is tricky, and I think everyone gets it wrong at some point. And you can get it wrong in two ways. You either work too hard and you burn out, or you work too little and then you're at risk of falling behind. So it is about finding balance. There's something I do in Oxford which I call like my Oxford weekend. So if I have a deadline on a Monday, and maybe I have a deadline on a Friday as well, my weekend will not be Saturday and Sunday because those are 2 days before my deadline. Maybe my weekend's going to be Tuesday and Wednesday, but that's fine in this city because I'm a student and I have the freedom to do that. So I structure my week around, when I have to hand things in. And there's another thing, like pulling your timetable together can be quite tricky, working out what you need to be at and when. So that's another way to structure your week. And then I also think sometimes it can be better to plan your social activities quite far in advance. So think for the week, okay, on Tuesday, I'm going to see this person. Maybe I'm going to go to a club night on Wednesday. And then on Saturday, like I want to play sport all day and do nothing. And then outside of that, you can plan your work times. I don't know, like certain systems work better for other people. And it is difficult and you'll get it wrong a few times and you tweak it. And I don't know, I'm still getting it right. And hopefully sometime in third year, I'll eventually get it completely right. But, maybe towards exam time, that'd be useful. But we'll see. It's just one of those things that you play with and you grow into. It's not something to worry about in advance because everyone struggles with it. And that's the other thing, like there's a massive community feel that you're all in this together and you're all trying to have fun and work hard and do well. So yeah, you grow into it.
Great, thanks. So we're going to move on and talk a bit about sort of facilities at colleges. So I wonder if we could go to Shelley and if Shelley could just tell us a bit about the way food works at colleges.
Yeah, sure. So because sort of mainly speaking for my own college, because it may be slightly different at other colleges, but essentially it can all depend on what the catering facilities are like in your accommodation. So for example, at Jesus, for first years, we don't have any accommodation that has catering facilities, so kitchens. So for the most part, you'll be eating sort of in college or making your own arrangements. But as you go through to your following years, you go to other annex sites which have self-catering facilities. You have kitchens and all your stuff that you need for that. So in terms of sort of catering in the college, it's I think a really nice kind of system. It's a mixture of kind of fairly relaxed and informal and optional formal dining as well. So you've got meals available, sort of your 3 meals a day throughout term time, and that's fairly informal, sort of self-service, servery type meals. And then you have the option of for dinner what we call formal sittings, so that's a little bit later on in the evening, completely optional, where you get the option of a 2 or a 3 course meal, and it's just something a bit more formal basically, and served at table and that kind of thing. Yeah, as I say, that's available all throughout term time and pretty much all year round as well. How much or how little you get involved is completely up to you, down to your timetables, your eating habits, and all that kind of thing. It's worth kind of mentioning, I think, things like dietary needs as well. All colleges will cater for a variety of dietary needs. What you kind of get at each college will vary, so it's worth kind of checking that out if you're interested in particular colleges. But there will always be options for those that have specific catering needs. So it's a bit of a mixture, but it may be slightly different to other colleges depending on what facilities they have.
Great, thanks, Shelley. I think that sounds quite similar at most colleges. I wonder if any other colleges here have anything sort of vastly different they want to add. No, I think most colleges are quite similar in the way that they do it. There are some subtle differences there sometimes. I know in terms of how often there is a formal hall, and and some colleges have some additional food facilities as well. I know that some colleges have like a snack bar and things like that, but mostly the offering is pretty similar. Let's move on and talk about accommodation. I wonder if we could go to Lizzie to talk about how accommodation works generally at St Edmund Hall.
Yeah, so I think St Edmund Hall is fairly typical of colleges, with the one exception that we do in second year. So when you arrive in first year, I think it's the case at every college that you would get accommodation, usually on their main site, or at least with all the other first years. So you're all put together, you get the chance to socialise and meet people, you're around all the facilities, all the support you might need to find your feet in Oxford. So I was on a floor with 12 other people, and that was my first group of friends. It was a really broad range of people, a lot of people I probably wouldn't have necessarily spoken to if they hadn't been on my corridor, but we ended up being really good friends, and it was a great starting point socially, as well as sort of helping me settle in. Now, at St Edmund Hall, we have a slightly different in our second year. We're not too many colleges do this, but we still do, where most of our second years get together in a group of friends and they'll go and rent a house privately. So that's that practice run adulting that I mentioned earlier. What often happens is students who are going into their third year will pass the house they've had down to students in their second year. So there are some streets in Oxford where pretty much all the houses are taken by St Edmund Hall students, and it's been the case for years. So you know that you're going to get somewhere pretty good, and your friends are pretty much still living next door, but you've got so much more independence. And as Ethan mentioned, you can have your space in the holidays, because at most colleges, you have to move out for the holidays, but if you have your own home, it's yours for as long as you want it, which is really convenient, and you often get a parking space. So I played a lot of cricket at one point, and it was great because one of my friends had a parking space and we could drive to matches with all our big kit bags, so that was quite nice. When it comes to third year, we revert back to what is more normal amongst colleges, and we have a room ballot. So that means everyone is randomly allocated a place in the list. Person at the top of the list gets to choose first, person at the bottom of the list chooses last. Now, it doesn't sound super fair, but it is the fairest way of doing it, I think. And at St Edmund Hall, pretty much all of our rooms are the same, they all cost the same, and the facilities are very, very similar. So even if you're at the bottom of the list, you've still got a chance, well, you will still get a nice room with access to kitchen facilities, and you might even still get an ensuite, which is pretty useful. So it's not like you have to pay different things to get different standards of room, it's all the same. If you're on a 4-year course, there might be some people here perhaps doing sciences with masters, then you can either choose to stay in one of our annexes in East Oxford or go up to our graduate site in Norham Gardens to get a bit of choice.
Great, thank you. So I think St Edmund Hall is one of the colleges where you do need to live out for a certain proportion of your degree. Some colleges will offer accommodation throughout. I wonder if there are any of the other colleges here that are, so Univ. Mamuna, do you want to just talk quickly about how accommodation works at Univ?
Sure. So it's actually very similar to Teddy Hall, in that you get randomly allocated a room on main site in your first year, and then in your second year you are still in college-owned accommodation, but you move up to the annex, which is on Staverton Road, about a half an hour walk away, and that's where all the second years live. There's some grad accommodation up there as well, and then for third year you ballot for a room back on main site, and again, wherever you come on the ballot, you're bound to end up with a good room. You're like shared facilities at Univ. You're never sharing with more than sort of 7-8 people, and that's never a problem. You have catering facilities throughout your degree, and yeah, I think that's sort of sums it up. I think a lot of colleges do this thing where for a year you usually your second year you'll go out and live in their college annex, but that's how Univ does it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, many colleges will have an annex sort of separate to the main site, usually not very far away, and they're all still very central buildings. Yeah, great. So we're going to move on from talking about food and accommodation. We're going to talk a little bit more about support, and how the collegiate system provides a supportive environment, and also about the direct support that colleges can offer. So perhaps we'll start here with Ethan, if you could talk a little bit about the sort of student side of support.
Yeah, sure. So I think for me, the main benefit of a college is that you're not getting lost in kind of a large university where you're one of thousands and thousands of students. In a college, you're one of a smaller number, which means that if you need to access support, you can get that directly and very quickly. So I think I mentioned it earlier, we have like the JCR, which is the body of undergraduate students. And on each JCR committee, you'll find 2 kind of welfare officers. And they're often your first port of call, not necessarily like to fix your problems, but they're really good at like signposting you. So you say, I'm struggling with this, they can pass you on to the relevant resource. You say, maybe you want some counselling, and they can put you in contact with the college counsellor. So that's the first way to get into it. Also, everyone will have, I know at St Hilda's, we have a really strong system of like having a personal tutor. So every year, you might not be told by them, but you might be told by them. It's like it's just someone you can go to, especially with academic stuff, but also when you kind of have other stuff going on in your life that's starting to affect your academics. They're the best person to talk to. Maybe you need some leniency with your deadlines, or maybe you need to take a week off because you're really ill. You talk to your personal tutor and they can sort that kind of thing out for you. We also have dean and junior deans, which are kind of more formal college systems for support. But they're all approachable people that you can reach out to. So like the thing is, the support is there. I mean, obviously you rely on your friends a lot. Another benefit of colleges is that you're closer with the years above you than you would be at a normal university. You meet the people in second year and third year and fourth year, and that's another way of getting support. But it all comes from the fact that you're in a college, which is a community, with lots of people. But you're not lost. That's the thing. You're an individual.
Great, thank you. And let's go to Shelley then to talk about support as well.
Yes, I think at Jesus, very similar to as Ethan said at St Hilda's. You've got a variety of support, not just from your tutors and from the academic side, and who will also kind of are very intuitive and will pick up on any kind of if you think there's any problems or you're experiencing any difficulties. We've got things as Ethan mentioned as well, welfare reps within the JCR community. Also at Jesus we also have a welfare officer, as well as the junior deans. So the welfare officer is your sort of first point of contact if you're experiencing any difficulties, and maybe to need someone to talk to, or a bit of signposting, or just someone to help you kind of work through what maybe the problems are, or how you can kind of manage whatever's troubling you. And so they're kind of your first port of call. There's also the academic support team. So we have a academic services manager who will, again, manage things like disability support and a support for those with additional needs. Counsellor as well. I think Ethan mentioned the same at St Hilda's, college counsellor. The other thing that maybe, and I think this happens at all colleges, is particularly for first years, you have, when you come into the college, you'll have your what's called a college parent or a buddy, and that's somebody in a year above who's kind of allocated with you. I think usually they're from a similar subject, and they'll kind of be your kind of your welcome person really, and someone will help you sort of integrate into the college and kind of help you discover how things work and all that kind of thing. So they're a really good port of call and source of information, particularly when you first join and everything's a bit new and perhaps slightly overwhelming or unfamiliar. They're a really great source of support as well. But I think probably I can't think of anything in addition to what I've already mentioned that Hill does have as well.
Great, thank you. Another thing that some people worry about when they're considering applying to us is whether there's just a single type of person that applies to and gets into Oxford, and this Oxford type is, and they're worried that they won't fit in, that they're not this Oxford type. I wonder if we could talk perhaps about whether there is an Oxford type and whether people do find they don't fit in. Let's start with Lizzie.
It's a really good question. I think there is something in common that all Oxford student has. I wouldn't necessarily call it an Oxford type, but something everyone has in common, which is that they're pretty excited to be here and they're interested in their subject. I think that's the absolute hallmark, to be honest, rather than they look like this, they wear these shoes or anything like that. There's not really anything like that. It's just that people are interested and excited to be here. And that was really, really refreshing for me when I was at school. Sort of, if you put your hand up too much, people would give you funny looks. You don't really get the same thing at Oxford. People are interested in their subject and they're interested in each other, and that was really exciting. So that is all I would say is the hallmark.
Great, and perhaps we'll go to a current student as well. So Mamuna, can you help us answer this question as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you think about sort of an Oxford type, you will have thought definitely a few years ago, a few decades ago even, there would have been an Oxford type, but I think the university has really made a huge effort over the last few years especially, and Oxford is a very diverse place. I mean, going back to talking about societies and things, there are societies that represent every student. You'll you'll never be sort of standing in Oxford looking around and thinking, you know, there's no one like me here. And the colleges are really making an effort to sort of reflect on their inclusivity. I know that UNIV, we have a diversity and inclusion week every year, and you know, there is no, and I think Lizzie really summed it up. I think the fact that we all have in common is just that we're very, very excited about our subjects, and we're all kind of, you know, you might use the word like nerdy. We're all nerds for our subjects. We love learning. We love interacting with people about our subject, and I think that's the only Oxford type that matters. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Yeah, Oxford is a very diverse place, and I think also one thing worth mentioning about sort of location. I mean, there are students at Oxford from all over the country, but actually there are students at Oxford from all over the world, and we do have an international community as well. It's something like 15 to 20% international students, so it's quite a reasonable proportion, and they represent a huge number of countries as well. So it's a very diverse place. Okay, we're going to go on to some of the questions that we've been receiving, and for these questions I'll probably just open it up for the panel to stick their hand up and answer what they feel they're able to. So we'll start with so the question is, are there any particular colleges that are known for their art societies or events? And maybe we'll see if anyone has anything in particular they want to say. Lizzie.
So when it comes to art, St Edmund Hall, I think, has the largest art cohort of art students, partly because we are right across the road from the Ruskin School. So you just cross the road and you're in your department, which is quite convenient. In terms of sort of societies and extra things, because we have that large cohort of art students, they're often involved in lots of other things as well as things specific to art. So we have student magazines, which there are often designs put together, as well as pieces that are written or responded to. We have photography competitions as well. I think quite a lot of colleges probably do that sort of thing. But there's also room to make your own things. So if you ended up at a college, or if you're looking at colleges and you can't really see what you're after, they'll almost all have like a clubs fund where you go and say, I'd like to start an art club, or I'd like to start a sort of a viewing club, we'd like to go to a gallery, we'd like to run a trip. You can look at all these things and get help and support and financial support as well to make those things happen.
And Shelley?
I can probably add just a little bit to that, because I think you said, are there any specific colleges? So at Jesus, we're on Turl Street, and we are neighbours with Exeter College and Lincoln College. And those three colleges between them run what's called the Turl Street Arts Festival, which is and obviously recently it's not been in Oxford, but is a programme of events specifically for the arts, music, performance, drama. I think there's poetry, all sorts of things involved. So but I think across all of the colleges, and I'm sure there are lots of various clubs and societies that are offering those kinds of activities and programs.
Great, thank you. Let's move on to another question. So we've had a question about which colleges are best for international students, perhaps some having more storage available than others. I imagine we probably can't answer specifically about storage, but we may be able to answer a little bit about what's available for international students that can help. Ethan.
Yeah, so I mean, I know St Hilda's offers storage. I think most colleges offer storage. It's quite a reasonable accommodation to make for international students. I think St Hilda's are about 25% international students. I don't know how that compares, but it feels quite high. I think one of the most important things is, I keep going back to this JCR committee, but it is so important because it affects your college life so much. But we have an internationals officer. So in Freshers Week, they put on special events to help you kind of get used to Oxford, get used to the UK. And then throughout the year, they'll run socials. And they also act as kind of another welfare role. So if an international student is struggling with things that are maybe due to the fact that they're away from home, that kind of stuff, then your international officer on the JCR is your first port of call.
Great, thank you. I'm aware of at least one college that, as well as having college parents, international students have a college godparent as well, who is also an international student, just to provide particular advice on being an international student. So I know there are other methods that are used for support as well. Okay, let's answer another question. So we've had a question about, do you have to pay separately for food? I imagine this is just sort of how you actually pay for your meals. Perhaps we could just quickly hear from a couple of colleges about that. Lizzie?
So at St Edmund Hall, at the beginning of the term, you prepay for your breakfasts and your dinners, and then you can have a certain portion of those refunded if you don't use them. So if, like me, you were doing a subject that you didn't have to start very early in the morning, I never went to breakfast, I was asleep. So on the few occasions I did go to breakfast, I'd have several breakfasts worth of food and feed myself for the whole day. And then I could sell breakfasts to friends. So we had an exchange system that you could use. And then I'd have a refund on the small portion that I didn't use. You pay for most of your dinners as well, and most students would have to be in college and get through those. But if you didn't, again, you could exchange those with other students if you wanted to. And when it comes to lunch at St Edmund Hall, it's a pay-as-you-go system. So sort of the main course with 2 sides would be sort of £2.50, and then it's a little bit more if you want pudding, or you can add a drink, or you could add soup. So you just pay for what you have. And I quite like that system because it means you know exactly how much you've spent, because you've already spent it at the beginning of term, so you don't need to worry about budgeting for it too much, and you can get some of that money back if you want. That's how it works. Great.
And Mamuna?
Yeah, at UNIV, we do a similar thing where we prepay and we use our university cards in the hall to sort of just scan for what we've got. It's kind of it's pay as you go, but it comes out of that that top up that you've got on your account, and we use our sort of online meal booking system. So if you need to top up more than what you prepaid, you can go put some money on there. And yeah, it's very easy to do, and I think a lot of colleges work in the same way.
Yeah, certainly a lot of colleges use university cards, I know that. Shelley?
Just very quickly, kind of similar at Jesus, it's a pay-as-you-go, but ours is on what we call a battle system. So you sort of scan your university card, and then you get your bill, usually at the end of each term, I think. So you sort of pay, you pay later on. I guess you don't sort of need to top up or prepay anything, but again, very similar, sort of effectively pay-as-you-go.
Great. So we've had another question. So we've had a question about teaching from October 2021 and whether it will still be online. So the one thing I will mention is I think the current intention is that where possible, students will be back in Oxford for the start of the next term. But Ethan, do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure the residency requirement is not in place. So if you can't get to Oxford due to certain restrictions, then that's fine. The university is like okay with that. But I know at Hilda's, our plan is as much in-person teaching as possible, where the guidance and the kind of laws allow. Things that are centralized, so lectures that take place at departments, I guess will also come down to government policy and social distancing requirements and stuff. But I know there's this general sense that people want to get back to in-person teaching. And at St Hilda's, like, we're really keen on that. So where we can, things will be in person.
Great, thank you. And so where teaching has been online, has everything, all of your teaching been replaced? So were you having tutorials online? Were all of your lectures online? Yeah. So it has still been there. It's just been in a different format. Great. Let's move on to another question. So we've had a question about the interview process. So how was the interview process, expectation versus reality? And before we start this, I'll just say for anyone who is applying in the coming cycle, your interviews, if you're shortlisted, will take place online for the coming cycle. So perhaps when we're answering this, we could focus on the sort of content of the interview rather than the coming to college part, because that's not happening in the coming cycle. I wonder if anyone could talk about that. Mamuna, yeah.
Yeah, the interview, to be honest, it's actually a very fun experience, because you come in and you're very nervous, and all it is a good conversation with a couple of leading researchers in the subject that you want to do. And what they're really gauging, to be honest, is how well you can absorb and sort of process information. And the best thing to do is kind of just have a discussion and accept what they're saying, put forward your own ideas, your own thoughts. And it's actually, a lot of people come away from it feeling sort of, wow, that was 20, I can't believe that was 20 minutes. It ended so quickly. And yeah, I actually had my interview on Skype because I was out of the country. So I have experience of having it online, and it's absolutely fine. But obviously it's hard to not feel nervous for something like this. But yeah, just definitely trust yourself with your skills and just have a conversation.
Lizzie?
Yeah, I think Mamoona summed it up really well. I think what most often happens as an interview is you might sort of get a bit of a conversation about something you put in your personal statement. So, if you said, oh, I read this book, or I went to this event, or I enjoyed this podcast series, they might sort of get you to chat about it just to settle you down, because hopefully you know quite a lot about that because you read it, or you've done it, or you've said you've done it. Make sure you have. And they might have a conversation about that with you, just to sort of settle you down and get you started. And then quite often, they'll always give you something subject specific, and it's usually something you've not seen before. So I sat in on quite a lot of remote interview workshops that we ran last year to help students, and hopefully we're running again this year. And in each subject, the people in the workshop were presented with different things. So in history, there was a section from a poem. The student who was coming in to be mock interviewed had half an hour before the session. They'd made a few notes, and then they had a conversation about it with the history tutor. And similarly, I sat in on a physics interview, and they'd been given a graph, and they'd had a bit of time to look at it, and then they were asked to pick out things from the graph and see if they could understand it. And it was exactly like my geography interview, which was quite a few years back now. I was given a few different maps with not a lot of information on, and using that information, I had to make logical conclusions. So it really wasn't a test of what I knew, it was a test of how I could think. What could I do with the information in front of me? They're not expecting you to come in and be an expert in your subject already. They're expecting you to come in and be someone who they could teach to potentially be an expert in that subject one day. So they're really looking for people who can think through what's in front of them, who can talk through their ideas. And if you're given something else on top of that, can you absorb that? Can you work with it? Can you be flexible? Like in my maps, I suggested some reasons for why the map might look that way, and they gave me another map that proved me wrong and asked me to do it again. So I basically had to go back from scratch, incorporate those new ideas and think it over. It was challenging, but it was quite enjoyable. So I'd say you don't have to worry about what you know, it's about how you think.
Great, thank you. Very quickly, Ethan, if you could come in on that, we've just got a couple of minutes left. So
yeah, sorry, I just got horrible flashbacks to my own interview experience where I spent weeks trying to learn everything about economics and management, and that was just completely the wrong take. What you need to do is just think about your skills and relax and just show what you can do. It's actually a great reflection of what a tutorial is like at university. You're problem solving, you're thinking critically, and the best thing is just relax. Assume that you don't need tons of prior knowledge, and where you don't know something that is required, if you just say that, they will tell you because they want the interview to be productive.
Great, thank you. So we've just got a minute left. So very quickly, we're just going to go around the panel to each of them and ask them in no more than 10 words what the best or their favorite thing about their college is. So let's start with Shelley.
I'm going to sound, at the risk of sounding cheesy, it's the community. It's just a really welcoming, vibrant community.
Great. And Mamoona?
Genuinely the same. It's the friendliest place. It feels like home.
Ethan?
The people are nice, but Saturday brunch is the best.
And Lizzie?
For me, it was a place where you can be whoever you want to be, and it was an opportunity to grow up and find out so much about myself and do that in
I think Lizzie's paused. Oh. Great, thank you. We are now out of time, so I'm afraid that is the end of the live stream. I just want to thank everyone for watching. I hope it's been informative. Please do continue to take part in the virtual open day for the rest of today. There are lots of college and department events on. Please do watch any further live streams and take part as much as you can. I also want to thank our 4 panelists for being so great and helpful. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of the virtual open day.